What has this offseason taught us about the direction of the defensive back market in the NFL? What should we be paying attention to over the next 12 months? We're breaking that down today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league. The Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day. And a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Joe, happy Tuesday. I got no cutes, no one-liners, no national made-up days of the month. Just happy Tuesday. What's up?
It's the first day of August, right? If I'm not mistaken. The month where football happens.
Yes, it is. Pro Football Hall of Fame induction this weekend.
Zachary Thomas, right? The big one.
That's true. Yeah.
How'd you escape the Hall of Fame game, man?
How'd I escape it?
Yeah.
It was either that or go to Dolphins training camp.
No, I'm just saying, like, how did the Dolphins escape that?
Oh, because the Jets and Browns are playing. The world's got to get as much of the Jets as they possibly can,
true.
you know?
That's true. I'm enjoying every second of it. Really enjoying it.
Hey, what have you thought about the entire Dalvin Cook public tour? I don't know how much you've been keeping up with it or not.
I've been keeping up with it, and I'm guessing by the time people listen to this podcast, there's a chance he's on a team.
Fine. Yeah, it's midday on Saturday right now. You know,
we're recording.
Joe traveling to Bills camp and me in Miami for Dolphins camp. It's kind of this weird limbo. So we are pre-recording. I know he's visiting with the Jets this weekend, but going on Good Morning Football and talking about how, the blessings of playing in Miami. He's talked about what a blessing it would be to play with his brother after the Nyheim Hines injury happened. Now he's going to the Jets for a visit. They've teased the Patriots. It's been like this very weird saga, I think.
I think he's going to be on the Jets.
You putting dollars on it?
Yeah, I'll put a little Monopoly money on it. I think he goes to the Jets.
I'll bet you a Built Bar.
A Built Bar? Like a single Built Bar?
A single Built Bar. Next time I see it.
Okay. I'll take it.
Done. I bet the field.
You took the field, I took the Jets?
Yeah. I can do the Joe Marino special and take the field.
Smart.
All right, so we're talking DBs, not running backs or Dalvin Cook here today on Locked On NFL Scouting, Joe.
Correct. All right. So this is the last one of these, right? We've looked at all the position groups. And so we close it off with the defensive backs. We'll start by considering what the last 12 months have told us about the direction of the market. Look at some of those big decisions coming up. And then, of course, we'll close it out with our predictions. And Kyle, one of my big takeaways in preparing for this today was we had a lot of movement with big name safeties, not so much with corners, right? We saw Jesse Bates got a big deal going from the Bengals to the Falcons. Von Bell got a nice contract going to the Panthers. Juan Thornhill, Donovan Wilson stayed with Dallas and got a nice contract. But as far as corner, like Jimmy Ward moved to a new team. But as far as corners, like a lot of guys just stayed. Jamel Dean, James Bradbury. You had Darius Slay. They worked that out. I mean, Byron Murphy jumped teams, but it wasn't a huge deal. Cameron Sutton wasn't a huge deal. 3 years, $33 million. Feels like these corners are, teams are taking care of their corners.
Yeah, you had 2 contracts, 3 if you include the Jalen Ramsey trade and restructure, but 2 contracts get in excess of over $10 million per season to go to a new team. 2, Joe. Now, you might get more than 2 if one of these other guys hits, but I'd be surprised if Ronald Darby, whose last was $10 million, gets 10. He's not getting $10 million at this stage. Byron Jones coming off an Achilles injury and missing all of last year.
Nobody's even talking to him, are they? I mean,
no, they're not. William Jackson was traded at the trade deadline last year for like a future conditional 7 at 13.5. They're not touching that money. So you're probably going to get Chris, and it's going to be Stephon Gilmore and Cam Sutton as the 2 corners that change teams in the true open market and commanded over $10 million per season.
And that's crazy. Cam Sutton and Stephon Gilmore are the 2 teams that signed a new deal in the open market that got north of $10 million.
Yes, at a premier position like corner.
That is crazy, especially when you hear all the time about how at these like college camps that they've got 106 wide receivers and 12 guys playing corner. Right. And they tell them, hey, would anybody like to switch? And they're like, no. We've heard this from multiple people.
Yeah.
Is it more about just the cast of characters? Because if guys were worth it,
I think the guys that are worth it don't hit the market.
Right. We just saw Trayvon Diggs get the big deal. And
then there's this magical line that everybody draws in the sand at the age of 30 for corners, where it's this expected and largely backed wall that these guys hit at 30. A lot of them do. Or at least if you're going to play a lot of man coverage, it's not going to go well. Now, Pat Pete at age 32, playing in Minnesota, plays in a zone-heavy defense. He got 7.5 at age 33 to go play in Pittsburgh. Right? But I think this is one of those, kind of like the offensive line when we did the offensive line group and we explored hey, here's the percentage of offensive line contracts that commanded over 3.5% of that year's annual cap as the annual average salary. The success rate's not particularly good because the good offensive linemen, teams aren't cutting loose and letting flow into the market. I think it's the same thing with corner.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about corner as well is it took a while for the big resets to happen here, right? It was like that 2017 draft class with Marshawn Lattimore and Trey White and some other Marlon Humphrey, right? Those guys really started to push this market. I remember are we going to get a $15 million a year corner? And then we still only have 2. We have 2 DBs in the entire NFL making north of $20 million. Denzel Ward and Jair Alexander. That is the entire list. And we talk about when you foil that against what we talked about yesterday with the defensive line, the NFL is paying the defensive linemen at a much higher rate than they are these defensive backs.
So, and some of that I think comes down to the trends of the league. You need more bodies in coverage naturally. So it's a math game to space the field on the back end. And up front, it puts more pressure on the guys that you have up front. Well, you're not going to have a lot of success consistently rushing 5 or 6 guys.
Can't do it.
Not with the way that today's league works. And you can't, even playing a super high volume of man coverage with the shifts and the motions and the bunch sets and the crossing routes across the middle and the play action, but it's so hard to do. So yeah, those lockdown corners, they change the math for you and they're really, really valuable. But at the end of the day, the way you space the entire field, it's still a numbers proposition in playing 2 high safety shells. And as a result of that, is it easier to give your corner support by playing with extra safeties to cap vertical routes and space the field more effectively? Or is it easier to find a better pass rusher that can get home? Like this whole coverage versus pass rush debate, I think the league showed what they think right now. And I think based on the trends of the league, it's backing that and helping to explain why, because you just need the bodies to defend the full width and depth of the field with the way today's game plays.
Well, we will explore if we get another $20 million a year defensive back here in just a moment. But first, our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. So whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. When the top tier of quarterbacks is off the board in fantasy football drafts in 2023, there's another line of luxury passers and runners who are guaranteed to fit your starting lineups every week. One of them is Bears' Justin Fields, who started rolling out of the garage last season and is bound to jump into the fast lane this season. This time, on top of his huge rushing total, Fields can deliver improved stats in the air, with DJ Moore now leading Chicago's wide receiver corps. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shock struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it, and they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car, because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up, because now you know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Locked On Country. Let's ride.
The worst coaching job in NFL history,
Broncos Country.
according to Sean Payton.
Let's ride. Broncos Country. Let's ride. All right. Safeties, real quick. We acknowledged kind of the lack of movement onto new teams for corners. At safeties, Jesse Bates, Von Bell, Juan Thornhill, Jimmy Ward, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Julian Love, Marcus Epps, Chuck Clark, although that was technically a trade. Like, you had a lot more traction with the top players in that respective market going to new teams. I think that's the fascinating element there, is just the amount of turnover going to new places.
It's replaceability, right? You feel like you can replace safeties. There's good safeties you could sign right now. You know, and a lot of these veterans are not getting what they're looking for. I mean, Jordan Poyer is a perfect example of that. He wanted the Harrison Smith deal. Brother, he got a fraction of the Harrison Smith deal. He got 2 years, 12 and a half.
Yeah.
So that continues to be a position that the league is widely hesitant to give big deals to aging players, despite it being a position where we've seen some guys age pretty well at the safety position.
Yeah. Now let's talk about what's next for this group of DBs. Man.
Jarius Sneed?
Yeah. It's not a lot of top of draft guys, right? I think that as I look at this list, that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah, I think the best name at corner is Sneed, right? Like, that's clearly the best name. And he's going to get a bunch, but like in terms of corners, you're looking at like Jeff Okudah, right? Like, can he blow up this year for the Falcons? And even then, is there enough there for you to really go? And CJ Henderson, so like your two top corners that year, Okudah and Henderson, they're both top 10 picks, are both were traded within their rookie deal,
right?
Like, so that doesn't help you.
Other interesting names at corner.
Jalen Johnson.
Jalen Johnson's an interesting name. Kenny Moore is worthwhile to acknowledge in the nickel.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Davis, I think, is a really interesting player. He's kind of a height, weight, speed, physical type guy. The Chargers are obviously committed to J.C. Jackson with a contract. I know that you kind of open into the window where you could get out of that contract in 2024, and he was abysmal when he played last year. And then they also have Asante Samuel Jr. So like they have some bodies, and they're a team that's pretty tight with cap. What does that situation look like? That might be a name that I think it's a pretty good market.
Adoree Jackson.
Adoree Jackson.
Chidobe Awuzie, obviously, he needs to show himself as healthy, but he's going to be 29, man, when he hits the market. Same thing with Dory Jackson will also be like 29 as well. I think we got our big one. We got Trayvon Diggs, man. That was the big
Right.
corner deal.
Right. Yeah, this is kind of a don't look for corners in next year's market because as dire as it was this offseason, I think it'll probably be worse next offseason.
Well, in all reality, I mean, you're going to have extension eligible players like Patrick Surtain, right? That's going to be a 20 million guy. JC Horn, he'll be extension eligible.
Yeah, you're going to get
Tyson Campbell.
You're going to get more of the same. Players that have proven their worth at that position are going to be coveted and retained and prioritized by the team that's drafted and selected them.
Draft corners early, often, every year.
No such thing as too many good ones either.
No.
There's some interesting names at safety, though.
Okay.
I think you're kind of back. Like Grant, I think what Grant Delpit does this year will be really interesting.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, a really coveted prospect. He's kind of come into his own. He almost played 100% of the snaps last year. He's going to be 26 years old. That might be a really interesting name for a guy who can kind of play all over the field for you.
Antoine Winfield Jr.
Beyond that, Antoine Winfield Jr., Kyle Duggar. Have to imagine the Patriots are going to pay him. They've got all the cap space in the world. He is like a new guy on their back end of their defense. Duggar
and Holland will be fun to watch at safety, right? Like those are the two names for young guys, man. And Antoine Winfield. Like those three guys, that's big time. Those are three big time players. It'll be extension eligible.
Yeah.
So be a little cat and mouse game there.
Dude, you got some otherwise talent here too. Like Jeremy Chin is eligible. Xavier McKinney is an expiring contract. Brandon Jones, who missed about half the year last year, but I think is going to be a breakout candidate this year. Cameron Curl with Washington. Mike Edwards. You got some names at safety, man.
Let's look at the fifth-year options. I always like to do this. So 2021 first-rounders. J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, Caleb Farley.
No.
Greg Newsome, Eric Stokes.
Probably.
Yeah, no first-round safeties. But then you had Tyson Campbell was pick 33. And there's probably big money there.
Yeah. And honestly, with all those names kind of coming up, might not be a bad thing to just get the Tyson Campbell extension done.
Yeah, it'll be just like the Jalen Hurts deal, right? Like
right.
Relatively speaking,
you'll freak out on the front end, and then three other contracts happen. You'll be like, oh, okay, like that's a little bit more in line.
The 2021 second round was very kind to defensive backs. So Tyson Campbell at 33, Jevon Holland at 36, Richie Grant at 40, Trayvon Merrick at 43, Asante Samuel 47. That's your second round. I didn't mention Kelvin Joseph. Sorry, pour one out for the Cowboy.
So here's my take. And it has nothing to do, well, it kind of has to do with what we're talking about, but not really. This upcoming draft class in 2024 will be the best draft class we've seen since 2021.
For DBs?
For everything.
Okay.
I mean, think about that 2021 class that had Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle and Kyle Pitts early. And Trevor Lawrence was in that class.
Patrick Surtain.
You just went through the second round DBs. Wasn't Christian Darrisaw in this class?
Was he 21?
Jalen Phillips was in this class. Micah Parsons was in this class. Devontae Smith was it was a freaking loaded draft class. 2024 will be like that.
Good.
Take to leave you with as we get ready to make some predictions here on this episode of Locked On NFL Scout. Prediction time, Joseph. What do you want to say? Where do you want to go? Safety or corner?
Let's start with corner.
Okay. Let's start with corner.
Because Patrick Surtain is really standing out to me.
As the next highest paid corner in the NFL?
I think it's inevitable. I hate that I'm going to predict it, but like that's our next reset. It's Pat Surtain. It's after the season. Jair got 21, so a little more than that.
Give me 5 years, $110 million. They'll go 22. Draft dudes do math. 22 per.
I think you do it if you're Denver.
It's a no-brainer, right? You as a team, you've obviously made the investment in Russell Wilson, but what else are you really paying for? Justin Simmons?
Zach Allen and Mike McGlinchey?
Zach Allen, right.
And, yeah. Ben Powers, that's who you're paying for.
The 22 for Surtain would be a lot better money spent, right?
Yeah, man.
So go ahead and put me down for 22 there. How about safety? Did you want to go another corner? Or
Tyson Campbell's the one that's fascinating to me. Where would you put him at? I mean, Diggs just got 19.4. I don't.
Right. So you've got Diggs and Lattimore at 19.4, and then you have Xavier Howard at 18, and then Tre'Davious White at 17.25. I think Campbell
18.
goes in the middle of that, 18 or slightly over.
Yeah. Remember when the J.C. Jackson deal felt like a big deal? 16 and a half.
16 and a half. Well, here's the thing about the J.C. Jackson deal, just looking at it. Of course, I clicked the button and it disappeared. The average guaranteed money per season on that is fairly low. I think the gut punch is you look at the total guaranteed money on the J.C. Jackson money, which is 40 million of that 82.5, versus the guaranteed money of Trayvon Diggs, 34%. You had Xavier Howard had 40% of his was guaranteed. J.C. Jackson's almost 50%. Lattimore 45. Marlon Humphrey 41. And then you're up into like the upper stratosphere where these contracts went. So it was just a disproportionate amount of the money for J.C. Jackson was guaranteed, whereas the actual APY on it now is not bad.
Safety. So the top of the safety market right now is Derwin James at 19.1, then Minka 18.4. Can one of these guys,
Adams at 17.5, and then Jesse Bates at 16.
And Bates being a recent contract is very relevant.
Right.
Holland, Winfield, Merrig. There was another really good one that I'm not mentioning. Cisco's not really part of that conversation. Do you think one of those guys get 20? When do we get our first $20 million? I
don't think it's with this group. I think there's too much nickel and diming right around 19 that can still happen, where you could give a guy the highest paid, but not make the jump to 20.
Yeah, because you're always, if you're the team, you're gonna say, well, we're not paying you more than Derwin James or Minka Fitzpatrick.
Right. So I think you have a lot more filling in to do between 18 and 16, where there's one contract right now between 18.4 and 16, and it's Jamal Adams at 17.5. And Minka and Derwin James having the resumes that they have, I think gives them a little bit of cushion. So I would say none of the guys that you just mentioned crack 20 or go over 19.
It's going to be a while then. You need a, like, to top Derwin and Minka, that's significant.
Yep.
Like Kyle Hamilton has to become a star type stuff.
Or one of those guys waits another year and has like 2 all-pro seasons between now and when we, like Jevon Holland playing for Vic Fangio.
Yeah, it could be very good things. Could be Justin Simmons like, right? We saw
it. Right. Like I think that's a pathway to getting that kind of thing, but the Dolphins would have to wait 2 years to get the contract done. And Jevon would have to play to the best of his ability, which is top of the league stuff, is what he's capable of, but he's got to go out and do it. And hopefully the defense puts him in position to make more plays instead of just having him be the janitor on the back end like he was last year for Josh Boyer.
And then there's like Lewis Seen and Daxton Hill from the 2022 class. Kind of need to see Jalen Petrie. Obviously there's a lot of good early returns there. Jaquan Brisker, Brian Cook's going to get even more opportunity with the Chiefs. But you're talking about topping Derwin and Minka, and that's
going to be what it's going to be like. I think that's going to be like what the tight end market's like now. Just
going to be a while.
Been a while. All right, no, we're not going to start singing here. I think we're done talking
before we start singing.
Before we start singing, so we're going to put a bow on this thing. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He is Joe Marino. We are Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Shout out to our everydayers who are locked in with us on a daily basis. Hope you come back and see us again tomorrow. Peace.